Hello friends, welcome to JavaEE JSP tutorial. In this video, we are going to see how to use a JavaBean with JSP. So JavaBeans are classes with fields, properties and methods. Usually the fields are declared private and it will be exposed through the getters and setters, and we call that as properties. So the properties will be public. To access JavaBeans inside JSP, 3 tags are used and we will see those bean related tags that is used in the JSP. We will see that soon. Alright. Alright, so if you see JavaBean is a regular class with private fields and public properties that access these fields through getters and setters. And there are other supporting functions also, but this one is optional, but these two are mandatory. So when we talk about the fields should be in camel case. This is very important. The field should be camel case. Here we are using wildfly, right? So the wildfly expects the field should be camel case. Say for example, if we want to use a field called customer ID, C should be smaller case, CUST customer. Then after that you can use the uppercase for the next stanza. But the very important stuff is the first letter should be lowercase. It should not be uppercase. And if you use only the field called name, then N should be smaller case. So the member private field, they should start with a smaller case. After that you can respect the Java standard of using the camel case. That means say for example, if it is a employee ID, E should be smaller case, ID I should be the uppercase, bank account B should be smaller case, account A should be uppercase. Like that you have to form the field name. After that there should be getter and setters. So once these two are done, then the bean is in a ready state. You can use it. So if you see, this is just regular class, but if it adheres to these two rules, then we can call that class as a bean. So in JSP we can access these beans using the special tag called JSP useBean. So this is one tag and we will see this in more detail later. So what this tells, the JSP page will make use of the bean. Say for example, if you create some bean called school, then here you can use the JSP tag to use that school. So once JSP bean is used, and here you will specify some ID, let's say X, then you can make use of that bean using other two tags like JSP getProperty. We will see this also in more detail. Then JSP setProperty. So what happens, inside the JSP file, you can make use of these tags, JSP useBean. So you can tell what bean you want to use. Here if it is a school bean with private members and the properties, the useBean will tell that I am going to use the school bean in this JSP file. So after making this statement, you can use JSP getProperty. That means you want to get some property fields here, right? And you can get the property of that field using the getProperty, and setProperty you can set the field. Suppose if we have a field called school name, see school, S is smaller case I am keeping here, N is caps, school name. Then you can access that using the get property. You can get the value inside this particular field of the useBean, and using the set property you can assign a value. So that's all. So this is the bean, and this is how you can use using these three basic tags inside the JSP file. So in our example, we will create a form called customer detail. So this is the HTML part, and if you see here, we are using the name, ID, name, and the zip. So what happens here, we will submit our form to a JSP file. So this is where the action takes place, and here we will do both kind of a processing. Let's say the form is submitted here, it is processed, so request processing here, then response will be here. So the same file will do both. So after processing it, it will just respond back to the same browser session. What we will do here, here we will use a bean called customer bean. So this will have fields like a matching field, ID, say name, and zip. So when we are designing, we will give the matching name. That means here we will provide the ID as per the rules of JavaBean. Then here we will, when we are forming the input field in the form, we will use the same name as given here in the bean name. So that will help in pushing and popping the properties here when we are using the JSP. So what we will do here, we will use the JSP tag, JSP useBean tag. Then here what we will do, JSP setProperty we will do. So setProperty, when we are using the user supplied value, we will read using the setProperty, and we will push that to all these three JavaBean field. Then in the same file at the latter portion, we will use the JSP tag, getProperty version we will use, and we will read the same content whatever is pushed in the previous part. Then we will reply back with some formatted string. So the form will, so it will display two pages, right? First page 1 will be displayed, that we will browse, then we will submit, then all this processing takes place, and once it comes back, we will display one more page 2 on the same browser session, stating you typed these three fields with some formatted way. So that's what we are going to do here. So if you see here, we are using a three part. One is this HTML, the other one is the JSP file, which stays in the web server side. This is the client environment side, and this is the web server side. And this JSP, it will make use of the customer bean. So we can say this as a data layer. That means data will be stored and retrieved. Later we can even move it to the actual database, SQL Server or MySQL from here, and we can retrieve from the database. Then we can supply this bean to JSP. For now, we have JSP and we have bean. This JSP, it acts as a middle layer, or we can say it's a business logic controller, and this will be the model layer. Model layer means it's a data layer which stores and retrieves the data. So that's what here we are doing. Form will be submitted. We use JSP useBean, JSP set we will set the fields, then in the later part of the same file we will retrieve and show it to the user. So here if you see, the step 1 is, so this is the bean class, and if you note down here, customer C is a smaller case. This one is very important. Here C is a smaller case, L is a smaller case. Then ID capital, N capital, and zip capital. So in the JSP file, when we are using the getProperty and setProperty tags, the wildfly will expect these fields should be in the camel case. So that's a very important one. If you make this customer ID C caps, then you may get an exception. Alright, so after this we will generate our getter and setter version for all the property. You can see that here, and other stuffs are simple. So set customer ID, we are receiving the string and we are setting it, get will return it. And you can notice these are all public properties, right? And the fields here are private. So that's all here, and we don't have any special function. We have a field and we have property. There is no special function, and since we followed this camel case stuff fields, and since we have properties, this customer is considered as a, even though it's a simple Java class, we can say this as a customer bean, a simple bean. It's not a enterprise Java bean, it's just a normal simple bean. And the step 2, we create a HTML file. So if you see here, we are forming a form tag, and action is taking place in the JSP file, which we will develop next, JSP file. And we have 3 fields. In the bean we saw there are 3 fields: customer ID, name, and zip, 3 private fields, then a getter and setter. So here in the form, if you see, there are 3 fields. One is customer ID and another one is customer name and zip. The other important stuff, if you see, name, we are using the same name as in the JavaBean. So in the JavaBean we have this same thing as a member. So the member name is cust ID. The same I am specifying here. So if you see, the name is matching. The input type is text and its name is matching. And then we have a submit button. So that's all. Our HTML part is done here. So we have the HTML and we have the JavaBean. So the HTML portion is ready and JavaBean also ready. Now we need to develop a JSP server-side script that will perform all the communication. Alright. So the third step is, if you see here, we are using JSP useBean. So this is one tag, JSP : useBean. Then here we are identifying this bean as customer. So you can give any name. You can even give CUST, ABC, whatever you want. Here we just give an ID, customer, and here we are mapping the bean class. So if you see here, the bean class will be in the package tube.codingexamples.bean. Inside that we will create the customer bean. When we go to demo, you will see. So that's what here I am relating. JSP useBean. This is the bean I am going to use, because customer, that class whatever we saw in step 1, adheres to all the rules to become eligible as a bean. So it has 3 private fields and 3 public getter and setter, and all the private fields are respecting the camel case. So that had the eligibility of living as a bean. So that bean here we are referring, and inside this JSP we will use that, or we will refer this big class or this class as a customer. So inside the body, if you see JSP setProperty name, that means here I am using the JSP setProperty and I'm referring the customer bean, that means this bean, then property equal to star, that's what we are specifying. So what happens here, if you see, this is the HTML, this one is the customer bean. The request came to our JSP. We told which bean we are going to use. Then set property, we specified customer. So we just specified the bean name only. We didn't specify the specific property. We said set all the property. Property equals star. Here it is set property. That means set all the property. What happens? Here we have 3 fields, right? Those 3 fields will automatically get matched with the 3 private field here. Of course, we have the getter and setter methods. So the tag will make use of those public exposed getter and setter methods, and it will set the properties. So that's why here we are giving the matching name, customer ID. I mean, when we are forming the HTML, customer ID, customer name, and zip code all are matching one with the field name here. All right, so here this part, so if you see here, this is the JSP file. When in the demo, I mean in the slide, I specified there are 2 parts, right? Here one will do the request and another one is perform the response. Here if you see here in this portion, we are actually pushing the data to the customer bean, this portion. Let me call this as 1A, 1B. That is what happening here. 1A, 1B, both will happen. Why? Because here we are setting it, right? That means it should retrieve the content from here, then it should push it to the bean. So both will be done here in this line. Next, we are coming to the second portion, customer detail. It's a normal H1 tag. Then if you see here, we are using getProperty as a separate tag. Customer detail, here we are printing a static content, customer. JSP getProperty, here we are using the getProperty tag. What property I want to use? Before that, maybe the order should be like this. It will be nice to read, but I just kept the name as a third one. It should be here. So getProperty, which bean I want to use? I want to use customer bean. Here the useBean will, it no needs to be inside this useBean. You can even keep it outside. Once we say the useBean, that will be available to this entire page. So here I am telling I want to get property from the bean customer, that's already initialized here with the 3 fields. Then what property I want to read? I want to read customer name. So what happens, this specific portion will retrieve the property name. Suppose if a customer name is ABC, this entire tag will give you the ABC. So what finally we will get, this is inside the P tag, right? Customer ABC identified by, then we are reading the second property from the same bean class. JSP getProperty, property name customer ID, name customer is living in the location JSP getProperty from bean customer. The property I want to access is location zip. That's all. So it's living in location some zip number, say 211231. That's the zip number, let's say. So that's what happening here. So this portion here, we are doing the 2A and 2B stuff. So this getProperty will read the data from the bean And at the same time, since this is the JSP content HTML, we are appending it with the dynamic content. Ultimately, this will go to the browser session as a response. All right. Here, request processing will be done in this first part. Why request processing? Because we are setting the property for the bean. So the data will be read from the form field and it automatically performs the pushing. That means from form field we will read data by mapping the form field name with the property name, and we will push it through JSP using this setProperty star. So if you can even use JSP setProperty JSP setProperty name customer, bean name, property customer ID. Then you have to specify one more field called value. Then you can substitute the value also. So if you want to selectively push some value to a bean, you can do that also. Okay, now it's a demo time. Let's go to Eclipse and prepare this example. So in the last video we talked about setting up the error page, right? Now we will continue with this example. Here the bean should go inside a library. So this is the first Java resource we are going to create here. Let me choose new class, and package name we will specify it as tube.codingexample.beans. So the first bean what we are going to create is a customer bean, so it specifies the name here, customer. That's all I need, so I'm clicking finish. So you can see tube.codingexamples.beans. Here is our first customer, first bean. So you have to remember that the fields should follow the Java standard of a camel case. So our customer bean contains 3 fields: customer ID, customer name, and location zip. We need to provide getter and setters as well. So I just right clicked, then I have selected source, generate getters and setters. And if you expand, you can see that get customer ID, set customer ID, same way for customer name. For location zip also we are doing the same, and the access modifier is public. Now I'm clicking OK. So here we will add one more comment, and if you see, our bean is ready. So customer bean that contains 3 fields and getters and setters. So the bean is ready. Next we will create the HTML content. So I'm right clicking, the project name, then I'm choosing HTML file. Let it go inside the web content. Customer detail, that's the HTML name I am giving. So we already saw form processing here, so that example will be useful for this example as well. So customer detail, then I'm choosing HTML5. So this is our code snippet 1, sample 1, creating the bean, And here is our next snippet, code snippet 2, create form field matching with the bean field. So if you see here, we have customer ID, then one input field, customer name, second input field, type is text, and third zip, one more input field. What is important here is the name. We are giving it as customer ID. Here if you see, this is customer ID. Customer name, location zip, the same, matching. The field name, bean field name is matching with the form field. So since this is the case, in the PowerPoint slide we saw, when we are using a set property, we doesn't specify a property name, we just specified star. That means fill all the properties from the data which was read from the form. So this is the way the Wildfly will read the content from the form and store it here. Alright, our HTML form also ready. Now we will go to JSP. So here I will name it as 06 underscore resp customer detail. I'll copy that because this is where the action is going to take place. I'm choosing new JSP file. So let it go inside this web content. Next, JSP with the HTML markup. Finish. So if you see here, inside the body tag, so class is tube, coding example, bean customer, it is giving error. Let us have a look at it. You know what's the error? Here it's in plural form. Or if you get error like this, you can right click the customer, then choose copy qualified name. Let me paste it here and see what happens. No, I don't want this way. Copy qualified name. Okay, this is what I want. Copy this, Ctrl X, then place it here. Save, and you can see that error is gone. But because previously it doesn't use this yes, and since it doesn't find the bean, that thrown error. Now here we specified useBean, then we are setting the property. After that, since once you specify useBean, even you can put this set property outside also. You can use JSP set property name, and then bean name, then value. Likewise you can set, here I set property equal to star. That means it will set all the bean fields. After that, in the second portion, we are reading the content from the bean. Here we are storing the content to the bean. Here we are reading it from the bean. All right, now let's remove this, and we will start the server. Then we will publish our web application. So web application is deployed and it is synchronized as well. Now we will display this form, run on server. So in the last video we saw some of the refresh issue. Here we can use even edge. So ID I'm giving it as 101, customer name, Dave John. So here I'm choosing a register, and you can see that customer Dave John identified by 101 is living in the location 447998, and you can see we haven't used this form processing inside our JSP file. So everything is taken care by these JSP tags. So here we assigned whatever the form field is, then here we are displayed, and if you see we used a bold tag for while we displaying the customer name, and you can see that here, sorry, the ID. Identified by customer ID. So that's displayed in caps since we used a boolean. Okay, all right. So here we just now saw how the data is retrieved from the form stored in a JavaBean. Then we read the data from the JavaBean and displayed it here. So this demo will be useful. Later we can upgrade this to read and write data from the database. That's all here in this video. Thank you for watching. Bye.